Hi, this video is about the ACT English section, grammar and drills that I'm going to explain about. Okay, so on the given packet, if you go page number 1, it explains about apostrophe. The basic idea of apostrophe is making possessive. So then whenever you have any noun that you put, apostrophe and s, then that becomes a possessive. Or another usage of apostrophe is contracting two the words in one. Like it is, instead of it is, you put it apostrophe s, things like that. So I'm going to explain a little bit more about those with examples. So in the first, if it is a noun with apostrophe, always, that's only, that's for possessive. But then case of possessive, you have to think about whether it is singular noun or plural noun. So the idea is, the default idea is always the apostrophe s. The only exception that you need to remember is when the noun is plural, it ends with s, then you only put apostrophe at the end. A lot of people get confused by the singular noun with s at the end, still putting apostrophe by itself, but that's wrong. Okay, so in the page 1, there's an example, Thomas. And some people just think that, oh, apostrophe, since it ends with the s, so people think that, oh, we should have just put apostrophe, that's it. But you have to put another s. So it indicates that, oh, this is singular. Okay? And then another example that I put, parents. Okay, so parents, this is plural noun, then you only put apostrophe, that's it. The second case is contraction, which is usually for pronouns. Okay, we contract two words, like it is. Instead of that, we putting it. But then the difference is what is it's like this. This is possessive. So after it's, you have to have a noun. This it's is whatever modifies this noun. And then sometimes you get to see from the answer choice as it's with apostrophe at the end. There's no such thing existing here. So as soon as you see this, the first thing you can do is just ignore it. Just eliminate that. And the next one, it says whose and whose. Whose with apostrophe s, this is who is. And then whose with se, that means possessive of who or which. Something that you have to be careful about is which or that possessive is also, whose. Not only human being, but also the things. You have to use whose for possessive as well. I believe the which and that, it looks really like difficult to make, separate possessive. That's why, we're using the same possessive, I guess. And then C, there. So they are with apostrophe at RE. That means they are, or they were. And then there with IR at the end, this is possessive. And there with RE at the end, this is for place. Okay, let me explain a little bit more with next page drills. So number 1, it says it's a country's whose. So it is, you change it to it is, it makes sense. But a country whose inhabitants. So if you change who apostrophe s as a who is, that doesn't make sense. That's why the who's at the end has to be possessive with. Again, before you listen to my explanation, please do these drills by yourself first, and then you compare to whatever I explain about. And then number 2, so 1.2. Like you have to look at the subject and verb, all the structure first. The main subject of this sentence is after where, it says the impressive and countless temples. That's the subject. And then verb is emit. So we have subject and verb. Then after that, they are glory. That doesn't make sense. Glory is noun. Then you have to modify glory with something else. You cannot put another subject and verb. That becomes run-on sentence. That's why the answer is H. If they have answer choice as, let's say instead of J, it's with apostrophe, let's assume without apostrophe, just a possessive form of that. Sometimes you have two possessives. Then you have to think about, oh, this might be another option that you have to think about. Then you have to think, you have to try to find what there or they or it should refer to. In this case, it's temples. That means plural. So there is fine as a H. So 2.1. The earth, but after earth it says inhabitant. Inhabitants is noun. Then earth has to be possessive. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense with noun and noun. And then there's no such a thing as a plural form of earths. So the plural we can eliminate first, which means A, B, C, all of them are plural form. So the only option that you can have is D. And then 2.2, again, when you look at F, which is it's with apostrophe at the end, that there's no such a thing existing. So we can eliminate this right away first. And then we think about whether it is referring to singular or it is referring to plural, because there's a option of plural as J. But then this is talking about the oceanography, which is singular noun. So basic idea of that is, oh, it's supposed to be it, and then possessive of it is H. And number 3, the worlds that. Worlds, if you want to put apostrophe after world, that apostrophe S, then you should have noun that world's supposed to modify, but then there's no noun that you see. So we cannot put A or D, so we can eliminate that first. And then if you choose between B and C, now if you want to put and, after and, explorers, subject, were is verb. So if you have subject and verb, then you should have comma in front of and. So C is wrong, because if C has like this, worlds, comma, and probably okay, grammatically okay, but then we have to think about after that, more about the structure of the sentence too. But even so, B will be better choice, but structure-wise, the grammatically, C is wrong because it doesn't have comma. 3.1, paragraph 3, number 1. It says encyclopedias, articles. So now we think about, this is the many encyclopedias or one encyclopedia that they're talking about. So in this paragraph, if you go 1, 2, 3, third line, it says a literary encyclopedia, which is a, singular. Because of singular a, it has to be singular encyclopedia. So we can eliminate C and D from there. And then articles. Case of B, articles with apostrophe, you should have another noun after, but then there's was, so it doesn't make sense. So the answer is A for this one. And then number 2, Lowell, and then comma, who's best known. So then after who's is possessive, you have to have a noun, but then there's no noun. That's why F is wrong. And then case of H, after comma, Lowell, and then comma, she is, then this is comma splice, which means there's no conjunction or connecting words between. So that's why it doesn't work. Case of J, and whose. Whose by itself is good enough to connect to Lowell, but at the same time, as I said earlier, case of F, after whose there's no noun, so we cannot use possessive. The only option that you can choose is G. Then you can double check that, whose with apostrophe S, then you can just spell it out as Lowell, who is best known for. So it makes sense. Move on to the next page, page 3, paragraph 4, number 1. Again, the first thing we can eliminate is A. Its apostrophe at the end doesn't make sense. Now we think about this is singular or plural. So they're talking about the pyramid, one pyramid. Because of that, it has to be singular. So it has to be B or C. And then after that, you can put it as it is or not. But then this particular part, that given part itself, the pyramid and it is surrounding complex, that doesn't make sense because this part is the subject. So it has to be C. And then number 2, the world's oldest monument. So the world's oldest monument, as soon as you see this one, the oldest monument, we see that, it is, this is the noun form. So then we have to have possessive. And then in this case is the oldest, so superlative, so which is we're talking about one thing. So that's why the world with apostrophe S, the one world, entire world, that's the oldest monument. That's why it's H. And then paragraph 5, number 1, who's best known? So who apostrophe S. Now, if you think about who is or whose with SE, but case of B and C is wrong because after whose S with SE doesn't have noun. So we have to choose between A or D. But now you have to compare between A and B, what's the difference? But then at the end, there's children's, right? So expand children's library services. But then this case, children's doesn't have apostrophe for A. So library is the noun, then you have to put in a possessive. Otherwise, it doesn't work. That's why it's D. And then 5.2 is the whole sentence. It looks like she is externally committed to its success. And then moving in and eventually residing there for 12 years. So who moves in? She. So it makes sense. That's why F is the answer. Case of G is wrong because run-on sentence, comma splice, because there's subject and verb again. And then also H is wrong because they are at the end of the sentence. It's kind of weird. And also it makes run-on sentence as well. Case of J is wrong because it's with apostrophe at the end doesn't make sense. A lot of times I see that some students having a hard time with picking F or A, no change, because it looks like you have to find something wrong. But one thing that you have to remember for grammar is always you started off of no change first. So which means you try to do something with this question given in a sentence, and then you read through. There's something that you can find the obvious wrong, then you can correcting it. You can correct it. But then if nothing wrong with the given sentence, you shouldn't pick anything else. So which means, let's say somehow F and G, grammatically both of them are right, let's assume, then you still have to go with the F because the something wrong, we have to change it. If not, then we have to keep it. Okay. And 6.1, Crocodiles. Crocodile is itself, in this case, is subject. Because right after it says have many traits. Then we have to put in a subject form, which is noun, which is D. And then case of D, grammatically fine, but then in the beginning of the paragraph, we don't put pronoun like they, because we don't know what they is. And number 2, their feet. There in this case is it has to be possessive because of feet. Feet is noun, then you have to put possessive. That's why it is F. Case of J is also possessive. What's wrong with J? Once. Then you have to have the subject should be one. So one can also tuck one's feet. That's what it has to be. But then since subject is they, you cannot put ones. And then case of number 3, it says it's. If you want to put it apostrophe S, that means it is. Once you put it is, the problem is there another subject and another verb come as allow, right? It is web to feed allow. That doesn't make sense. Then before allow, that's like in a noun phrase as a subject. So it has to be possessive. It's as a C because fit is whatever they're talking about. And also, how about D? There is wrong because one line above it says a crocodile, so which is singular. This is it about the simple apostrophe issues. And now move on to page 4, second part, which is sentence and fragments. The main idea of sentence is always you have to have subject and verb. That's how you make simplest sentence. And then complex sentence you can add with coordinating conjunction or subordinating conjunction, whatever conjunction you put. So you can have more than one clause. Clause means subject and verb as well. But the basic idea is just like one subject and one verb. So always I emphasize that whenever you read any given sentence from this English section, the first thing you have to do is always you have to pay attention to subject, and then you have to look at the verb. So subject is singular, then you have to have the verb as singular verb. Subject is plural, then you have to put plural verb. And then after that, you have to check tense, look around different sentences, and then this sentence should be present or past, and whatever you have to see. But anyway, the first thing you have to think about is always, whether this is fragment or not, is the first one that you have to check. And second one is, let's assume that you have pronoun as a subject. As I said earlier, you cannot put pronoun, which is he, she, they, it, all those things. You cannot put pronoun in the beginning of any given paragraph, because new paragraph means new idea. So you have to now show what this is about, and then you have to use pronoun after math. But then in this case, if it is pronoun, a lot of times we get confused between it and they. It is singular, they is plural. And also when you talk about time, it has to be it. Also when you talk about weather, you have to use it as well. But then a lot of times people get confused when you have to refer to a school or a organization. Then we tend to use they. So let's say such a high school, and they start having online class. Then it sounds okay because they, not one person, many people in school. So, but then the thing is, such a school, that means one school. Then you have to refer to that school with one noun, which is pronoun, which is it, singular. And then another case is a B here, pronoun of them and pronoun of which or whom. So not necessarily pronoun. I mean, something like this, let's say one of them. and then one of whom. Let's assume these two. Then you have to be careful that, this punctuation here has to be period, and then capital 1, because this is separate idea when you put them. But then when you put whom, this is relative pronoun. Relative pronoun is still referring to previous part of the sentence. So then you have to put comma and then whom. Okay? And also this is lowercase o. So simple, very simple. It can be, some, it can be something else as well. But, the idea is after preposition of, you want to put something, then you have to look at the punctuation before. And next one, adverbs. However, moreover, therefore, consequently, thus. There's so many adverbs, but those are adverbs, not conjunction, which means adverb cannot connect two clauses. Okay, so you have subject and verb, comma, subject and verb. Sometimes we put, however, and we try to connect these two, but that's wrong. How we can fix it is either you put period here, and then you're putting however like this, capital, or you're putting semicolon and just like however. Semicolon means period as well. So you have to be careful about those. I'll get back to this later on one more time too. And then now participles. When you think about participles, we have two different participles, present participle and past participle. And usually this thing, something that, I'll explain more about is this sentence. Let's look at this sentence. This is a pretty popular sentence that, you get to see all the time from the question. So let's say in the beginning, we see originating, which is participle, ing, okay? Present participle. There's no subject in front of it. And then after comma, we have main subject, okay? If this is the case, something that you have to be careful about is, oh, we don't have subject, so we have to borrow the subject from this one and put that in front of it. So and then you have to read it. The tomato is originating. Tomato is originating. The tomato is originating. Does it make sense? No, right? So tomato cannot originating by itself. So this sentence is wrong. So you have to put it as the tomato is originated in South America. So it's supposed to be, instead of originating, you have to change to originated. Okay, that's how you're supposed to change it to. Then let's try another example of similar here. This is past participle. Same situation. If you think about the beginning of sentence, it says grown originally. So then we doesn't have subject. We have to borrow the subject after comma, the tomato. So the tomato is grown originally. It makes sense. You can just think it as, if you have any participle that starts the sentence, you can just assuming as subject, and then if it is past participle, you have to put is or was or whatever situation, be verb, and then in this case is grown. So as the tomato is grown originally, or as tomato was grown originally. And then, so the idea that, we have to think about from here is always how we can think about the subject, okay? Again, that's extremely important. And then next, the number 5 is conjunctions. What are the conjunctions? Conjunctions are the one that connecting to the clauses, okay? So we have two different types of conjunctions. One is coordinating conjunctions, the fanboys. Fanboys is basically for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. If this is, fanboys, these are the one, we have to deal with, then, those are usually the coordinating conjunctions. Important thing is, let's say we have subject verb here, then you always have to put comma, okay? But also more important thing is subject is here too, okay? You have to check the subject and verb, and then one of these, and you have to put comma. I'll explain more about this. And then subordinating conjunctions when, although, because, while, if, all these things you just put, comma, right? And then move on to the questions, the drills. Question number 1. It says currency and then period including. Then including doesn't have subject, right? After that, there's no subject and verb. You cannot find any subject and verb. Because of that, including part is fragment. So we have to make it as like, sentence. Otherwise it doesn't make sense. The only option that you can put is either you're putting main subject for this and main subject and verb, or you connect it to, the previous sentence. So the best option here is B, because A is fragment, C is run-on sentence because there's no conjunction between currency and this. And then D is, if you want to connect with and, including, it doesn't connect to anything from the previous part. I mean, who include is the numismatics is the one that includes, but then if you're just like, putting and, then it looks like, collection is including. That doesn't make sense. That's why the answer is B. And then number 2, it says also study other types of payment. So in this case, numismatist is the subject, and then verb we don't have. So you have like, 2 dashes. We just ignore these 2 dashes first. And then you just like, think about, main verb. Then we don't have main verb, then we have to make the main verb. Then we have to look around what should be like the tense. So very beginning, the first sentence, it says is, which is present tense. Because of that, we have to keep the present tense. So, which is J. And then 2.1, it says families and then period, these communities offered attractive alternatives. So we have to think about the previous part. Revittown is the name of 4 large suburban developments created, blah, blah, blah. And then it says, next, the 4th line, it says built in 1950s. It doesn't have subject, right? Then we have to go after the comma and find the main subject, but then there's no comma, it's just like period. That means the built part is fragment. So we have to put in a comma. But after comma, we just put main subject, right? So then this subject should describe about this built as well. So the communities built in 1950, that makes sense. That's why the subject has to be these communities. So B is right answer for this. And then D is wrong because offering. Because in the beginning, it says built, okay? And then we have to have a subject and verb. So this becomes the main sentence. And then number 2, it says produced, these came. Then we think about the previous part, what is subject? Homes. thousands of homes. And then verb, were. And then next, after comma, these, another subject, came another verb. So subject, verb, which is comma splice. So we have to fix it somehow. There's 4 ways you can fix those. The first one is you're putting period in between. Second, you're putting semicolon. Third, comma with fanboys. Fourth one, either first or second one, you change it to phrase, which means you take out subject and then putting ing or something for verb. That's like another part. So out of these 4 options, the only one that you can see is J, which is the first case, period, and separate this out. And number 3, being. So the first part is says when sales began, so 1 clause, and then nearly 1,500 homes, which is subject. Now you have to have a verb. So then to make the verb, you have to choose between C and D. Then the tense-wise, it says when sales began, which is past tense. So you have to choose D as a past tense. And then 3.1, next page. Same issue, like in the previously, it says that whatever I said, when you have 2 clauses, then you have to do 4 different things on the whiteboard, right? So in this case, this is also a comma splice. So only option that you can choose is C, just like putting a period and separate this 2 out. And then number 2. Number 2, the question, it says the sentence starts from although. So although means you have to put the comma and then connect it to main clause, because this is subordinate clause, right? So that we have to put main clause. But then this is period, which means although part becomes fragment. So we have to put comma and then new clause start. So if you look at the options, let's say comma, which is G, H, those 2 are the commas. So we have to choose between G and H. But then case of G, the which part at the end is after the amphitheater, and then period of which, that which becomes another fragment. That's why it doesn't work. So we have to connect all this together as a H. And number 3, now, however. So as I said earlier, however is not a conjunction. However is adverb. Because of that, we have to think about these 2 are they're supposed to be like somehow separated. Otherwise, it becomes comma splice again. So only option that separated is A. There's no conjunction between. And number 4 is the paragraph 4, number 1 is the glass, one of them. This is another case that I explained earlier. If you see one of them, then you have to have period, glass and period and capital O, one of them, because this is separate idea, because them is new, them is supposed to like lead the new clause. So that's why one of them doesn't work. So case of A, wrong. In case of D is okay up to semicolon, one of them part, but then involving. So after semicolon, you have to have, clause. So you have to have a verb as involves. That's why D is wrong. Then B is right answer because comma and then connect this to with relative pronoun which. And the C is wrong, like the other way around, right? And number 2, least acceptable, something wrong that you have to find. So H is wrong because this is comma splice. We have subject verb earlier and then subject verb after. So you cannot put this. Number 3 is the main subject is one one of most exacting and complicated color techniques. So one is the subject, right? And then now we have to think about, we need to have main verb, but then how about tense? You go next line, it says which involves, which is present tense. Then you have to keep the present tense, which is is. And the next page, page 7, 5.1, it says bridge, comma, which is. Then the problem is in front of but, right? In front of but, there's a comma. That means after but has to be clause. So you have to have main subject and a verb. Then subject is this bridge, right? And then verb not there because of which. So we have to make the main verb as is. So that's why D is the answer. And then number two, there's typo. It should be double-decked suspension bridge, and then you shouldn't have that. Okay, no that there. But then if you don't have that there, it's just like subject and verb, right? Bridge, and then bridge is main subject, and then connect main verb. Then you have to separate it out between the first and second part. That's that. In that sense, it becomes G. And then number three. Number three, until 1981, when it was surpassed by Humber Bridge in United Kingdom, and then comma today. So the today part, at the end, the today part supposed to, come together with, United Kingdom. I mean the Humber Bridge in the United Kingdom, right? Because it's back in the days, the different name, but then now, today, it is Humber Bridge. That's what they're saying. So in that sense, we can eliminate, A, B, and then you have to choose between. No, hold on a second. Oh, that was my mistake. Okay, it was. No, it was. That just disregard whatever I just explained. I just kind of like confused. We have to read from like one line above because there's a main subject and main verb. It was longest suspension bridge. That's a main subject and verb. And then we have another clause when it was surpassed by Humber Bridge in the United Kingdom. Up to that is two clauses in one sentence. Then we cannot put another clause after. That becomes a run-on sentence. So we have to separate this out. Okay. So because of that, only option that we can choose is D. And then number 4, people, many of whom. Same thing. If you have period, then you have to put many of them. If you want to put comma, you can put many of whom. So only option that you can choose is G. Okay. Today I'm only gonna cover up to this much, and then next time I'll do chapter 3, which is from page 8. Okay. We'll see you again.